IMHO Talk Show.
I to the ISM, H to the Izzo Talk Show. Sir Charles.
Miss Max.
Razor.
That's right. The bottom of an hour, bottom of a show. We just bottoms up in here, you know. I'm sorry, Razor. I've been clowning all day.
I see. I like it. Love it.
Yes, indeed. But tell a friend, because you still got much more edutainment left. IMHO Talk Show on all your streaming platforms, because we're just delighted right now to be joined by these next two gentlemen, doing great work in the community. And it's been sort of a theme today. Like look at God. Like I just love how unintentional we can be, and it just comes together. That's how you know when it's a good thing, when a plan just comes together.
That preacher's kid be coming out in that time zone. Look at God.
just when a plan just comes together, and like this urban renewal theme and this redevelopment theme just kind of fell into place with the way that these guests have been here. And so one not a stranger, one may be a stranger to some, but the name probably is not. We're joined by none other than Mr. James Bryant. First, Mr. Bryant, can you hear us loud and clear?
Yes, I can.
Good stuff. And the other gentleman is Mr. John Settles. Mr. Settles, are you there?
I am. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you, so we can't see you. So we just either see a virtual background or a room. I mean, which is cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to be fancy and tech savvy, and now I did something to cause myself to disappear.
He locked himself up.
Hey, look, as long as the people can hear your good information, that is most important, sir. So we got you loud and clear.
Well, I appreciate it. I just dropped my daughters off to college, so I don't have anybody to help me. So
congratulations.
Congratulations on that. Yeah. So you saying you don't have your tech support? We understand.
Well, my son is still here, but if you have teenage boys, I don't know where he is, and he's not tech support.
Yeah. Say less.
Yeah, say less.
But let's so folks know Mr. James Bryant, stalwart here in the community. Particularly most recently, Mr. Brown, I guess, with the 10th Street corridor, right? Whether it's 10th and Page, 10th and Wordland, you have been very vocal with the community activism, making sure that the communities are represented in the face of redevelopment, urban renewal, things of that sort. Now, Mr. Settles, I'm going to kick it to you because I want you to formally introduce yourself and your position, your job, because you've been around Charlottesville for a while now. So folks may have heard of you, but go ahead and introduce yourself formally and what your title is.
Great. So my name is John Settles. I'm with Wycliffe Development Consulting. So I handle the development. We are one of 3 partners in the 10th and Wordland project. So we're the for-profit minority partner. We're 100% African-American owned company. Okay. We're partnered with 2 nonprofits, POA, the Preservation for Affordable Housing. They're the lead partner, and then National Housing Trust, which has been here for a while. They are the co-developer with Piedmont Housing on Kindlewood. And so we got involved probably about 3 years ago in this project when UVA was first starting to talk about it. There's a brother who is in charge of development at POA who had been advising UVA on affordable housing strategies that they were looking to take on when President Ryan formed the working groups. And so as a result of that, they put out an RFP. We obviously were very interested because we've been following what's been going on in Charlottesville since the Tiki Torch March, and just the opportunity to be a part of bringing affordable housing in town near the university. Because obviously if you spend a little time doing your research, you realize that, we've got income inequality problems across this country, but Charlottesville is endemic in that situation. And obviously, housing situation worsens every year, and housing is foundational. And so this was a great opportunity to be a part of bringing housing in proximity to the university, which means in proximity to healthcare and jobs and other things, which typically low-income neighborhoods are locked out of. So excited to be here, still trying to learn the neighborhood, still trying to learn the community. Mr. Bryant has been a wonderful partner along with our other ambassadors. So I'm here because of him, and I'm just following his lead.
And where's your company based out of?
We're based out of Northern Virginia.
Okay.
So
Virginia.
We're DC based.
Now, first things first, Max and Razor and Mr. Bryant. Mr. Suttles mentioned that it's a majority Black firm.
Mm-hmm.
And, he talked about his passion and the initiative when it comes to redevelopment in historically Black neighborhoods that we have here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that's the perfect place to start because, and Mr. Bryant, I want you, before Mr. Suttles responds, I want you to touch on the importance of working with Black developers who understand and who are empathetic to the needs of a Black community and how you build that trust. And Mr. Suttles, after Mr. Bryant, I want you to chime in on that because as I'm sure that you know and you've experienced by now, like historically Black communities are quite jaded. We're in the year 2024. Gentrification, urban renewal is something that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. So want to start with just how you do that relationship building and gain that trust. So Mr. Bryant, I want you to talk about the importance of that first.
First of all, I'm one of the many ambassadors that's on this committee. And I thought it was important that Mr. Suttles come to your radio show to share what he and his organization and the ambassadors are trying to do in terms of affordable housing. It is critical because I have seen it up close and personal, being a native of Charlottesville, long-term residents in the 10th and Page Street.
Mm-hmm.
All of my life, I've seen the changes. I've seen the gentrification in the neighborhood. I've seen people who have passed on and the properties got away from them. I've seen people who have come into the neighborhood who just sort of just go into their own little cubicles and they don't interact with those of us who've been here all our lives. So it's become quite a different neighborhood. And so when I was asked to be one of the ambassadors on this 10th and Woodland Street affordable housing project, I immediately jumped on board. Because it's critical to have people that are already in the community. I never met Mr. Sellers until the first time we had our first meeting. And right from that first meeting, I was on board. Him and Mina, who is another partner, they came to us. They explained what is going to transpire in years and a few years down the road. And I think everybody, all the ambassadors, there are lots of questions, of course,
right.
Lots of concerns. How is this going to affect our neighborhood? Who will go in the building? So he can go into more detail in that. But it is critical because unlike the other project that happened in our community, we didn't have any input. We were told one thing and something else was done.
Mm-hmm.
Instead. So the trust factor just immediately, the trust factor is not there. So with Mr. Suttles and his organization, I think everybody feels that we're going to get a fair shake out of this upcoming affordable housing project that's coming down the pipe. A lot of people, and I think it was important that he come on the radio station to a wider audience. We've already met at the Jefferson School Heritage Center, but
right.
to explain to your audience what it is that's coming down the pipe and how this particular project is going to evolve
Gotcha.
over the next few years.
Thank you. And Mr. Suttles, I want you to chime in there first, and then we, if you don't mind, and we can dig into the 10th and Wortland project. But yeah, just building that trust, being a majority Black firm, going into a historically Black neighborhood that's been disadvantaged.
Yep, absolutely. So let me make one clarification. We're 100%.
100%. I'm sorry. That's even better.
I want to clarify because
thank you for that.
That's important delineation. And let me just say, I think that's why we're really excited about this opportunity because, as you know, development, even affordable housing, there are not a lot of African American firms in the space and in the business, and oftentimes we struggle with the same issues that many small businesses, small Black businesses especially suffer from, access to capital, access to opportunity and things like that. And so from the outset, we really wanted to make sure that this project was bigger than housing. It was not only housing affordability, and you'll hear me use that term a lot. And I've been using that term for about 15 years, and it's different from affordable housing because affordable housing is usually about the cost of housing, which is critical.
Right.
But housing affordability, I use that term because it includes all the costs related to the housing. So what do I mean by that? If you were in housing in the county, you have to add transportation costs into the cost of housing, because you got to have a car, you got to have gas. And I really want to highlight that because that's a critical thing that a lot of people are not aware of. And it's really important right now, because if you've thought about trying to buy a used car in the last couple of years, inflation has hit everything from the pandemic, but the price of cars are substantial. And so one of the things we're seeing a lot, and I'm talking to a lot of, tenants in other properties who work or live far away from where they work or where their kids go to school, where they shop, and transportation expense is a huge problem for them, especially if you're in areas where you don't have, a robust rapid transit system. And so those costs are not only financial costs, but they're costs to time and health. And so, housing affordability, I think, is really critical. And so as we're doing our homework, it's one of the things, that I believe in is you got to customize your solution, because too many times I've seen in the industry, people pick up, the same design, the same project that they've used a couple of places, and they try to do cookie cutter and bring that in. And so during the RFP phase, we were doing a lot of research, having a lot of conversations. And that's how I first met Mr. Bryant, because somebody recommended I talk to him. And, he allowed me to call and burn up his time, asking questions. And so when we learned about, Vinegar Hill and Star Hill and all the urban renewal and displacement and the gentrification, it became critically important to not only design a project, but allow the community to be a part from day one, from the ground floor, because we don't want to come in, like I said, and create something that, one, the community doesn't want, but two, that the community supports. So you'll hear me talk a lot about the commercial spaces and the offerings. And one thing, I want to get across to the listeners, as I've tried to get across to the community, we just build a building. So we've got some ideas, on what may go in the commercial spaces. But if we open the space up and we discount it to an entrepreneur and the community doesn't support it and they go out of business in 12 to 18 months, because if you've been in business, you know about business, 90% of businesses fail in the first year. And of that 10% to survive, 90% of them fail within the first 5 years. So it's really critical. So if the community is not going to support it, or if the community doesn't benefit, then it doesn't make sense. So we really need to hear from the community.
Right. Now, so that brings to mind, like when it comes to the developments, lost my train of thought. When it comes, when y'all take, I lost my train of thought. Right. It'll come back to me though.
I have a question for you real quick. This is Raising. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. When I hear affordable housing or the way that y'all are breaking it down, right? One of the things that I think that they're missing here in Charlottesville is the access to financial resources. People's bank accounts don't match to be able to live a good life and be able to purchase these houses. So I was also one of the ones who was helping teach people financial literacy in order to build a house. And then you're looking at, okay, we had a brother here, Aaron, that used to be here, and he said, the first thing we need to recognize is that there's a money problem. Right. So the good work that we're doing with your organizations and trying to make that amount of money come down so it's affordable, it has to match what people actually have in their pockets, in their bank account. And then if they do have businesses, I think that we don't do as good a job of making Black businesses fit what Black businesses are. Too often, I think we look at like PWI businesses and we try to match up our stuff to theirs. So they've been in business 5 years and they have this type of IRS reports and they have this type of credit score. And it just doesn't match our demographic. So then we don't have our businesses going into the places that you're talking about.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Thank you for saying that. Let me piggyback that, Mr. Settles, as you answer, because I was thinking you're a developer, and what I hear from all the time is that developers want to, in the business, you're in a business, like you need to make money.
Absolutely.
Right. So how do you balance, to raise this point, how do you balance that with saying it's affordable, but you also like not feeling like that you're not getting shortchanged?
Right.
No, that's a great question, and it's a
developer.
Sorry, repeat that last question.
No, I just said how much of what Razor just mentioned is your responsibility or obligation as a developer.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a great question, and I want to answer that in two ways. So both from the perspective of responsibility, but also smart business. And so one thing I've always done, which is, kind of atypical of most developers, is I see it as a true partnership. And so I tell people, including the lenders and investors, we can't be successful if our tenants aren't successful. If they don't pay rent, we can't pay a mortgage, we can't pay taxes. So we're dependent upon our tenant partners. And I think that perspective is important, because then it says, if I'm your partner, then I'm in this with you. And I've got to be about making sure that you're in the best situation. And so to the previous question, absolutely, finances are a critical piece. And there's really so much of that to unpack. And you're going to make me, unpack my whole career, which is finance, investing, and all that. So we have to not only deal with, the income inequality, and obviously access to jobs is an issue, and then also the education and the financial literacy, so that we're making, intelligent decisions with our money. And so if my kids were here, they would tell you, I get on their nerves because, I have never bought them a pair of Jordans. I said, you can get a job, you can, work some chores. And if you want to spend your money, I said, but, we have to prioritize what we view as important, and what we as a community, we have some spending things, but we also have some economic opportunities that are lacking. So economic opportunity is infused in this project, both with the commercial spaces, what we're trying to do in terms of pushing whoever becomes the general contractor to expand opportunities to minority contractors. But we're also looking at the operational, because a lot of times in these projects, they'll have opportunities during construction. But the real long-term opportunity is when the building's built. So one of the things we're working with the ambassadors on is we're saying, okay, we're going to have cleaning contracts out here. Are there local businesses that can become the cleaning contractor? We're going to have maintenance on the property. So we're working with, Hub and Quinn Hurley, and we're talking about how do we get local businesses that can paint or turn over the units and do these important repairs. So I think we have to have, that conversation as well around the economics, because as I tell people, we can bring down the house, the cost of housing initially, but there's certain costs that are going to go up that are beyond our control each year. So you have to increase the rent enough to keep in line with that. I don't know if you all, are like me, but, I'm walking around turning off lights because the electric bill every year is going up like crazy. The water bill is going up like crazy. Property insurance is increasing like crazy. Even though we're up here in an area where we're not, impacted by the hurricanes and things like that, the insurance company and the business make money. So what they're losing money on in Florida, they're making it up on us in the rest of the part of the country. So, we have to make sure that people are in situations where they can continue to increase their income to be able to keep up with all the demands of housing and food and everything else. So hopefully that answers your question.
How many units will the development be?
180 units of housing, and then there will be 3 to 4 commercial spaces on the ground floor on the 10th Street.
And do you have a sense yet of the breakdown bedroom size? And are there varying AMI levels depending on the unit size?
Yes. So, unfortunately, I don't have an ironclad answer yet, because if you understand development, and I give the example, it's almost like when you're trying to buy furniture for your house. If you move to a new place and you go to a store and you have this idea that you're going to furnish the whole thing, and then when you get in there, you see the prices, and you say, okay, we're going to start with the couch, and we'll fill this in later on. So we're really dependent, because affordable housing is financed usually in one or two particular ways. The federal low-income housing tax credit is the majority way affordable housing is financed in America. And then each state has a local housing finance agency. So Virginia Housing is the Virginia State Agency. So we're going to be applying to Virginia Housing next spring. They have once a year round. And typically with these projects, going in, you may have to apply 2, 3, 4 times before you win, because it's like the age-old adage, they got a little bit of money, but there's a lot of demand. So you may have, 40 projects vying for, enough money to finance 10. And so we have an idea now, but obviously we have to keep adjusting as costs and things going up. One of the things I do want to talk about, what we're trying to do, and it goes back to this point, is we're trying to emulate what CRHA was able to do with the Dave Matthews Band and raising money. So we can raise money. We're targeting having an AMI mix of 25, 25, 25, 25. So meaning 25% 0 to 30, 25% 30 to 50, 25% 50 to 60, and then 25% 60 to 80. So it'll be all affordable building, no market rate. But the reason we're doing that is we know the need at that 0 to 30. We know those individuals who are working minimum wage, they're struggling the most. So typically in these projects, it's about 10%. So we're trying to beef that up to 25. We're also trying to beef up that 30 to 50, because as we did the research and we looked at clicks, data, and other things like that, most of the entry-level jobs in Charlottesville were just above that 0 to 30. They're in that 30 to 50 band. And for what we've seen, there's a need for about 2,000 plus units today. And that number is going to grow. So remember, even if we win, this award next spring, this project won't come online for 2 years after that. So we're looking at 2027 at the earliest. So we know whatever the need is for housing now, it's just going to grow even more, at that timeline. So we're trying to do that.
I got
another question about the development part of it, just a real quick one. In terms of parking, that's a growing discussion here in the city. And so do you have a proposal for that yet, or at least what's on the table at this time? I know the city, members of the city are trying to get people to bike more, walk more, different things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
So once again, I'm answering 2 ways. So I got positive and I got not so positive. Okay. So the building will have parking. It won't have enough parking for all residents, but it will have substantial parking for the residents, and it'll have parking for the commercial spaces. So we think from a parking perspective, we'll be doing pretty good. We know we've heard from the community, and so we want to acknowledge the good and the bad. And the community has been a great partner. Traffic, and I've sat on 10th Street, so I know traffic is already an issue. So there will potentially be traffic problems, but we will have parking. And we know the city and the new ordinances really going away from parking, but we think it's important to still have parking, because as I tell people, I know there are seniors or people with health issues that may not be able to bike or may not be able to go, to the grocery store or afford, Instacart. So there will be parking underneath the building.
Them businesses going to be, I know Razor got something, but those businesses going to come for you, John. They're going to be at city council, at City Hall, talking about how you're impeding business with this. Like, so how are you going to refute that?
Give me a more clarity on what you mean, how we're going to be impeding business.
Like, for instance, there's, like Max said, there's already parking issues and whatnot. So I can imagine there being some right of center, let's say, business people who are going to look at it as, I don't care about this affordable housing. Like, I want more access to my business. And now you're taking potential parking from me, and you're going to make this area more congested. People aren't going to come to my business. Like, so how do you, what's your rebuttal to when you get pressed up against, local business owners when you're trying to do something for the community?
Well, I think the first thing is we're not taking parking away from any business currently. The little bit of parking that's on site, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I can get that to you. Majority of that parking is because it's owned by UVA now, for UVA employees. So we're not taking anything away from the businesses. Actually, I would think the project would actually enhance businesses in this neighborhood, because one, as you bring 180 people, you're bringing a density of people. So if they've got a product that's affordable and beneficial, they've got residents there, but then the commercial spaces are going to be an attraction that are going to be bringing people. So it brings more vibrancy to that particular block. So with vibrancy, they should be able to benefit if they've got something that benefits the people that are living upstairs and that are coming to those community spaces.
So where will drivers park who aren't, their space isn't provided for?
So that's a good question. We're still trying to work through. There's more than likely going to be, a few spaces for people that are coming. Obviously, if this is wildly successful and we have hundreds of people, we don't have parking for that. We don't have that solution now. That's one of the big challenges, and I wish I had a better answer for you. But in urban areas, they're dense like this, parking is hard. And
But there'll be a bus stop in close proximity, I assume. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, there's a bus stop.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
We're on the radio. Why you got to ask it? That's what you
Nah, because this is going to help or hurt, one of the two. When we talk about affordable housing, a lot of times people think that means black, right? I understand that we have a all black board, but I would think there would be some huge pushback if we were only housing it, or the majority of the housing was going to people of color or black people, right? Or is this a program that is set to give housing to the black community? Or is it people of color? Or do you have to do like we require out of some of the white developers, to where they have to make sure that they incorporate a certain amount of people, a certain amount of white people, a certain amount of college students, a certain amount of, whatever. Or do you fall under that criteria? Because I know when I listen to people, and you start
income levels, right?
Huh?
The income levels.
No. I'm not talking about income levels, because honestly, if I was a developer, I would rent to college kids right out who have all this debt that I know is going to have a good job through the university. Mm-hmm. So they meet that low income if they do it right after graduate. But that's not the same thing as the mom with the 3-4 kids with no car, that's at the max of what she can do because she's a LPN or whatever. And I'm just saying because I do a little business. So I'm just looking at the devil's advocate, so to speak. When we talk about low income housing, I don't want black people to think like, oh, they developing housing that we going to give the black people to do better. Because like you said, we got to make smart business decisions. And you also have to go by what is morally correct. So can you kind of let people know that just because we're talking about affordability and the board is black and the organization is black, we're not talking about just giving this to black people.
So that's a great point. And so let me add to what you're saying. Legally, we can't do that.
Right.
There are federal fair housing laws, so we can't discriminate against any class. So we can't break the law. We can't get in trouble. So yes,
I just want you to clarify, because people think like when we got Obama, we got a black savior and he gonna do X, Y, Z. Like people need to understand you got rules and regulations that you have to follow, and that doesn't mean that they have to badmouth you because they don't fit the criteria to go into one of these places.
Absolutely. So yes, while we can have the income restrictions, we can't have, racial restrictions. Obviously we can open up, make sure everybody has access to it. We are gladly going to be taking Section 8 vouchers. So, that's a financial tool. It's not a racial tool, but the reality is the majority of Section 8 vouchers are people of color. So, I'm glad you brought that up though, because I want to be clear. We have to follow federal law, so we cannot discriminate. You brought up another piece that's important as well. The low-income housing tax credit law prevents any project from renting to undergraduate students. But in the example you gave, we couldn't discriminate against somebody that graduated a year or two ago.
Right.
That's low income.
Right.
So
I just want people to understand that while we're over here arguing about the taxes going up because of the people that's moving into the place and the gentrification, that a lot of people have figured out how to work the system, so to speak. And I don't want them to look at you two gentlemen like you lied to them, just like they did at the dairy market. That's all.
No, I appreciate you bringing that up. That's a great point.
Yeah. Great point. So Max and Razor, here's what I'm thinking. And ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by developer Mr. John Settles and community activist Mr. James Bryant. So kind of piggybacking off of that, y'all, Mr. Settles, when it comes to trying to give priority to the people that such affordable developments and affordable housing spaces are geared towards, what is the methodology to actually do that? And this kind of feeds off of what Razor was just saying, which is the fear really of the community as a whole is that this is just more gentrification, which means I'm going to get pushed out. So as a developer, or you may even say, well, that's not my bag. That's actually the responsibility of A, B, and C. So you can answer it that way if that's the case. But I'm curious, what's the methodology to make sure that the affordable housing gets to the people who need it, and it just doesn't become a whitewashed neighborhood, so to speak, or not even, like to Razor's point, kind of not even just about it being a color thing, but it ends up pushing out people who need the housing because they otherwise couldn't afford it.
So that's a great point. So I want to go back to Razor's earlier point. So that's one of the reasons we are trying to have these conversations early and often, so we're getting the information out. Because one of the things that I think will really help this, and we're really trying to level the playing field, is taking advantage of that time. Because I'm saying that the earliest this building would be 2027. So we want to let people know it's coming. And, you know, we're talking with local organizations about providing some of that financial literacy and credit counseling so people can prepare themselves.
Okay.
Because one of the things that's a problem for a lot of people is, you know, they can't qualify credit-wise. You know, they don't have, you know, money saved up for security deposit. So we recognize, you know, those impediments and issues. So if we can tell people now, you know, especially when we close on the finance and then we have certainty, because right now it's up in the air. So
are you doing the 3 times the rent? Are you doing that? Because I mean, that is the way of the world. Like, because I'm talking to you as the businessman. Like, you want to make sure people can afford what they're going into. So does a person have to be prepared to be able to come up with 3 times the rent or show that, which seems to be goes on in Charlottesville now? No,
we know that goes on, and that's more of a market rate concept. So,
okay.
You know, we in affordable housing,
not matching market rate.
Yeah, no, and if we did that, if we matched market rate in affordable housing, we'd have half vacant buildings.
Okay.
You know, so we know we got to be flexible there. What there's less flexibility really is on, you know, the severe credit delinquencies, the recent evictions, things like that. So once again, that's why we want to, you know, partner with these community organizations to start providing this credit counseling. And you all are raising great questions. So we want to explain to the community, here is the things that people are going to be looking at. And here's what you need to do to prepare yourself for that.
Wait a minute. Sir, I don't mean to cut you off real quick. You just said something that just like hit me in my gut. Okay, we know that these lenders and everybody have been predatory. So if we have people that have recent evictions because the landscape has been set to make people fail so they can get other people to have more money, shouldn't we kind of look at that differently? Like a recent eviction in the 80s, yes, I understand that. A recent eviction here in after post-COVID, with the way that everybody jacked rent up, and it just seems like that's kind of a slippery slope.
So I think that's a great point. I think everybody has a story, right? And you have to give them the opportunity to tell the story. Mm-hmm. I think what's, you know, part of a problem in the industry is, you know, with the advancement of technology, everything now is just AI decided decisions, you know, so you don't get to, you know, explain your story and say, you know, here's why, because I think there's justifications that you can overlook. And then there's situations that unfortunately you cannot overlook. Okay. So a perfect example of that, if you have somebody that had a medical crisis and they were in the hospital and they couldn't work for a while, that makes sense. That's justifiable. You know, if they've been working all along and haven't had the job loss and just have made some different financial decisions, then that's a little harder to overlook. But I think having individuals that are part of the process versus the computer, I think gives you that humanity and gives you that, you know, ability to address things on a case by case.
I agree.
Gotcha.
And with the with the project being funded in the way that it is, federal funding, and it being affordable housing, does HUD have any requirements in terms of eligibility of tenants or applicants that have to be implemented in this type of project?
So one, I want to acknowledge you all are asking some great questions. I appreciate this. So yeah, you have a series of rules that you have to follow. So obviously, low-income housing tax credit is an IRS program. So they have their set of rules, and then there's federal rules as well. And then obviously, if you've got HUD money in there, you've got to follow those. So you've got kind of a tiering of regulations. It's really kind of a box that you've got to fit. And with affordable housing, unlike market rate, these are not just upfront, but you have annual certifications where you have to, report on all of this that's happening. So it's a very scrutinized product and project.
Changing gears here for a second. Who's your football team?
You know what? So I'm a Jets fan. My son teased me about that.
Okay.
I was born
no problem. You don't mind suffering? I can trust you.
I like Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. I roll with Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, he's from Virginia. Yeah, of course.
That's my second team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we are joined by developer Mr. Settles and community activist Mr. James Bryant. So Mr. Settles, as we're sort of approaching the end of the interview, I have a few minutes left. Want to shift gears a little bit and talk about more of the entrepreneurship, because I had the privilege of meeting you and hearing you over at Jefferson School and y'all had the 10th and Wordland Forum. So this this is big to me, and it's big to all of us here. We here are entrepreneurs and business owners as well. So when it comes to the community buy-in and entrepreneurship opportunities that could come from the commercial space, and just like the ownership, right? The economics of it. Talk a little bit more about that, about your ideas to try to help prepare folks who could benefit from it commercially.
Appreciate it. Thanks for asking that question. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have 3 to 4 commercial spaces. We have some ideas. So let me start with, these are just our ideas. We've been, running these through the community ambassadors.
You said
so
ideas.
Yes. But one thing we're clear on is there's a real shortage, almost at an epidemic level, of early childhood development slots. So we're thinking that one will be an early childhood development center. And I chair a board of a nonprofit in DC called Southeast Children's Fund. And so I'm hoping to bring that model here. And we're in DC's poorest neighborhood. Yeah. It's what I call ground zero. So if you hear about all the murders in DC, it's happening in this neighborhood, high school dropouts, it's almost criminal. The schools in this community in Southeast DC.
Where you, Barry Farms?
No, this is deeper than Barry Farms, Washington Highlands.
Okay.
So if you know South Capitol and Atlantic, we're behind Valley Green. So
okay,
you know what that neighborhood is like. But we have a nationally recognized program there where we not only provide early childhood development, but we have what's called a Professional Development Institute, where individuals get the child development certification, and then we provide scholarships for them to go on and get their associate's and bachelor's degree.
That's what's up.
So we're looking at this as not only an early childhood space, but an incubator space. So those individuals that may be providing childcare in their home can sophisticate and grow into an actual space, and they can get the mentorship. Because one of the things that's a big struggle, and I know it's one of the problems that brought down MACA, is the regulation. So as the previous question was about that federal regulation is real, but so understanding that and really being able to address that, I think there's an opportunity and a need in the community for early child space. The second space in the POA Resource Center, if you think about this, it's going to be similar to a Jefferson School. It's just a space where different nonprofits can come in and they can provide various services. So during the day, they may have, classes for seniors, computer classes, exercise classes. After school, it may have tutoring and after school, financial literacy, job training. So we want to just provide, both those cubicles and the conference rooms where organizations can come in and provide services to the community. They can also be housed there because once again, we know, as a nonprofit with tight budgets, spaces, at a premium that it's expensive. And so, the third space that we're talking about is potentially a mini mart, because we know historically there was a corner store in this corner for years that was a part of the community. So potentially could bring that back. And then the fourth space, we were talking about a financial literacy, but we got some surveys and that resulted in Jefferson School, and that wasn't as high up the list. So we'll have to go out to the community, have them vote a little bit more. But let me just say that the goal is to have these spaces. We're going to deeply discount them. So that's why we want them to be successful. We want the right businesses, because we're probably going to discount them 75% off of what commercial market rate is for space.
Why no food? Why no actual food? No, he said mini mart. I'm talking about food, like going and actually ordering food, not food food. Right, not food that you got to go get and prepare and then take back.
Right. Because we're in Charlottesville.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we change the narrative, no, we don't have enough.
Can I ask you a question real quick? Because I know we're up against the hour. Ultimately, this project has to be approved by the Planning Commission and ultimately approved by City Council. Have you and your team been in any discussions with the members of the Planning Commission as you move through the different phases of this project? And
yes. And so let me ask you two questions quickly. One, we've been in communication through our architects, civil engineers with the city. We actually submitted for site plan approval about a month ago. So mid-September, we're expecting those first comments to come back. And as you know, we're one of the first projects under these new guidelines. So we're making our way through this. And to the previous question, so once again, whether it's prepared foods, we need the community to step forward. So one of the things we've actually talked about is, and mini mart is kind of the term we're using loosely because people advise us to use that other than corner store. Really just a space for entrepreneurs where they can just sell their products. So it could be cooked, it could be cold. From the previous guests, whoever has those greens and those pound cakes, they can get space here. The thinking was, when I put it together, was just to have space for entrepreneurs that could sell their products. Because I've seen successful models where people can go from, baking in their kitchen to selling their, baked goods and creating a business. So, but
it could be a pop-up shop space then.
Once again, we build buildings. We don't run businesses. So whoever is going to run it, they can figure out, how they can make that work. Obviously it's more cost when you go with cook foods, because you have to have grease traps and things like that if you're cooking on site. But we're going to provide the space. If there's an entrepreneur with a viable plan and they can get it at a price where they can be successful, we're all for it.
Got you. Well, Mr. Settles, Mr. Bryant, thank y'all. We are up against the end of the show, but I want y'all to leave on your words, your final words. Mr. Bryant, feel free to chime in as well. But it's just of utter importance because, again, Mr. Settles, you know the history enough of Charlottesville. I'm sure Mr. Bryant has had conversations with you, and you seem like a learned gentleman when you go into communities. So what would be you all's words moving forward, and as far as how folks can follow up with you on them trusting the process? Because that trust is a pivotal word, right? Right. It's a lightning rod. So just your last words on that moving forward, how people can reach you and how they trust the process.
So real quick, I'm going to speak briefly and cede to Mr. Bryant because I feel like I've dominated too much of the conversation, and I want his word to be the last word. But, trust is earned. I know nobody's just going to hand over the trust because I know there's a lot of mistrust rightfully because people have, been betrayed too much. So we just have to continue to show up, to listen and do the work and prove, that we are here to stay and that we really care about this being successful. So, I appreciate that. I could, Mr. Lewis, you have my information. You can feel free to share it if anybody has questions. So I appreciate that. Mr. Bryant, let me cede to you.
Yeah, you all asked some great questions. And as just one of the many ambassadors, you can rest assured that I am on board with this project. If I didn't think it was going to be something that the community could rally around and the citizens of Charlottesville, I wouldn't be sitting here. And I felt it was important that Mr. Sales come to you all and share his thoughts about this upcoming project so that everybody will continue. It's a work in progress. We want people to ask questions. We want people, just like you all did, you had great questions, and Mr. Sales did a great job in responding to the questions. But continue to ask those important questions because in the final analysis, this project is going to benefit a lot of people. And I'm happy, and a lot of people all the ambassadors I sat and speak on their behalf are very happy about this moving forward.
That is awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen. And
I want to
Mrs.
thank you
Settles,
for the opportunity.
yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity, for the great questions,
Of course.
and for that Commanders fan over there.
Get 'em.
Now that Dan Snyder's gone, I may come back. But
Right. So, Mr. Settles, what is your website? Because I'm sure the folks would want to look up more information about your firm. Can you give me that website?
Yep, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna email it to you.
Okay.
So that way you have the accurate information. Okay.
Yeah. Got you. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, and we look forward to seeing you in the community and hey, like rebuilding Black Charlottesville.
That's right.
That's right.
Thanks. You all have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, family.
IMHO Talk Show.